The mountains were quiet in a way the city never was. Not silent exactly, there were always small sounds if you paid attention. Wind brushing through pine needles. A distant creek somewhere down the slope. The wooden porch settling as the afternoon sun warmed the boards. But it was a kind of quiet that left room for breathing. After my husband passed away, the house we'd lived in for 30 years felt crowded with things that no longer had a place. His boots by the door. The coffee mug he always used. The chair he leaned back in when he read the newspaper. I stayed there longer than I should have. Eventually I sold it and bought a small cabin in the mountains. Nothing grand. Just 2 bedrooms, a stone fireplace, and a porch that looked out over rows of tall trees. The first few weeks felt strange. Then slowly, I began to understand the difference between loneliness and space. One afternoon my phone rang while I was stacking firewood beside the porch. My daughter. Her voice came through fast and cheerful, the way it usually did when she had already made a decision. "Mom, tomorrow I'm bringing some friends up to the cabin." I brushed sawdust off my hands and sat down on the porch step. "How many friends?" "Oh, just 10. She said it casually, like mentioning the weather. "We're doing a little mountain weekend. Wine, music, hiking, pictures. It'll be fun." I pictured the small kitchen. The narrow hallway. The 2 bedrooms. Before I could respond, she continued. "You can cook something simple for everyone, right? And we'll need the master bedroom." I waited. "You can sleep somewhere else," she added lightly. The words didn't land as sharply as they might have years earlier. Instead they settled slowly. Like something familiar finally being recognized. When my husband was alive, he used to soften moments like this. If our daughter grew too demanding, he would laugh and redirect her, turning tension into a joke before it hardened. Without him there, the shape of things had changed. Our daughter had always been confident. Decisive, used to being accommodated. I realized then that I had spent years quietly stepping aside to make room for that confidence. "Yes," I said into the phone, "you can come." She sounded pleased, already moving on to other plans. "We'll get there around 3. When the call ended, the porch returned to its quiet. The trees moved gently in the wind. I stayed there for a while, watching shadows slide across the ground. It wasn't anger that I felt. It was something closer to clarity. The cabin had been my attempt at starting a smaller life. A simpler one, but somehow even here, the old pattern had followed me. Later that afternoon I made a phone call. The real estate office in town had helped me buy the cabin. They also managed several nearby properties for short-term rentals. At the time I purchased the place, they had offered to include it in their rental program. I declined. It felt too personal. But the woman on the phone remembered me immediately. "There's actually high demand for cabins right now," she said. "Especially for groups." She explained how their system worked. Guests booked through the agency. Contracts were signed. Access codes were issued. Cleaning crews came after each stay. Everything was structured, predictable, professional. I asked a few questions, then I agreed to place the cabin into their rental schedule. Just for a while. As it happened, one group had already been searching for a last-minute reservation that exact weekend. A group of hikers traveling from another state. Their deposit was processed that evening. The contract was official. The next morning I packed a small overnight bag. Instead of preparing food for 12 people, I drove 15 minutes down the mountain road to a quiet lodge near the lake. The room was simple but comfortable. A small balcony overlooked the water. For the first time since the phone call, I felt something inside me loosen. That afternoon my daughter's cars began arriving at the cabin. I didn't see it, but the property manager told me later how it unfolded. Several vehicles pulled into the gravel driveway, music playing, coolers being unloaded, people laughing. But when they approached the porch, they found something unexpected. A small sign near the entrance indicated the cabin was under rental management, and standing near the steps was Daniel from the property office. greeting the hikers who had just arrived with confirmed reservations. There was confusion at first, then disbelief. The reservation documents were clear. The cabin had been booked days earlier. The hikers had the contract, and Daniel had the keys. My phone rang shortly after. I was sitting on the lodge balcony when my daughter called. "What is going on?" she asked immediately. I could hear voices behind her, doors opening and closing. Someone asking questions. "The cabin is rented this weekend," I said. "Rented."
Wes?
"But we're here." I watched the lake below me. A small boat moved slowly across the water, leaving a narrow trail behind it. "The cabin is part of a rental program now," I explained. "When did that happen?" "Yesterday." Silence followed. Then her voice softened, though confusion remained in it. "You didn't tell me." "No," I said gently. The truth sat there between us. I had always told her everything before. But this time, the decision had belonged to me. Eventually she and her friends found rooms at a small motel down the road. Not the weekend they had planned, but somewhere to stay. Later that evening she called again. Her tone had changed slightly. Careful, not angry, just uncertain. We talked briefly about the town, about restaurants nearby, about the lake trail they might enjoy the next day. Nothing dramatic. When the call ended, the sky over the mountains had turned deep blue. I sat quietly on the balcony, listening to the water move against the shore. Somewhere up the road, guests were staying in my cabin. And for the first time since I bought it, the quiet there truly belonged to me.